We are live. Yes, we are. Took me a bit getting used to. I'm just gonna set my phone up. For some reason, I'm just wondering why my phone isn't saying I'm live. So why is my phone not saying I'm live? Just a bit unsure about this. There we go. It is. I'll send the volume down. So, welcome to a top 30 countdown of the Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th franchise. Now, that's God's sake, just like that. So, I was going to do this last week, and I got about 10 minutes in, and I just got like a little bit, I don't know, a bit pissed off, couldn't be bothered, wasn't in the mood, and I wasn't prepared. You know, prepare to fail to prepare, prepare to fail, is what they say. Didn't have any sort of write up down. You know, I was coming into it like without any idea of how I was going to place the films, and so I thought, well, it's a disaster. So within 20 minutes, I just stopped rambling and I just ended the stream, and I'd deleted the stream since. Yeah, it was just I'm really a bit pissed off the way it worked out, but I've used pen and paper. I've written down how I want these films to go down in what order, and yeah, so I'll just get right into it. So I'm just going to go to share screen. To Chrome tab and share. Eventually, and we've got 30 films now. Unless I'm missing something, there are 30 films in the franchise now. I'm not including New Nightmare because it kind of feels separate. Jesus Christ. Is my battery charged? Oh, Jesus Christ, hang on. So, can I even be seen here? I am there, am I? Let me have a look. I am there. So, 30 films. Now, with New Nightmare, it's 31. Now, I don't class New Nightmare as an official film of the franchise. So, and it's cleaner. 30 films. It just makes more sense. 31, untidy. 30 makes more sense. So, in that respect, yeah, I thought, yeah, go with 30. But where do you start? Because I've got an idea. I know it's number one, and you guys probably know it's number one. If you've got I'm saying you know it's number one, but you've got an idea of what will be number one. If you're like-minded to the way I think. But in terms of number 30, well, let's just say I think you'll have a fair idea of where I'm going to go. Because, like, if you take these 30 films, where would you put number 30? Now, I'm guessing people are going to say Rob Zombie's Halloween, Jason Goes to Hell, Freddy's Dead, maybe Jason Takes Manhattan, but for me, it's Freddy's Dead. Freddy's Dead is the worst of the worst, and that's saying something. Because there's some bad films in this group. I mean, and I'm a massive fan of this franchise, of all these. Well, no, I'm not a massive fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, but I am a massive fan of Friday the 13th and a massive fan of Halloween. But the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, it's not one of my, it's not even my third. When it comes to slasher franchises, I mean, how many are there really? And it wouldn't be my third favourite, and there's not that many really when you think about it. In terms of, it was a genre that existed in the 80s, into the 90s, maybe into the early noughties, but it's not like an overly sort of populated genre. It existed for a short period of time, for around 20 years, but Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is not, and it will be shown in this countdown because it's not a favourite of mine, and I'm going to put it out there now because it's not going to fare well with this countdown. But luckily this time, because last week I wasn't prepared, I didn't know what I was going to do, so this time I'm prepared. And yes, number 29 is Rob Zombie's Halloween, and I don't really need to say any more about this. The tears are inconsequential in this really. I'm just going to sort of just move films in front of other films, but these films are both D tier. Rob Zombie's Halloween is an absolute travesty of a film. You take a middle class Midwest, I say Midwestern is Illinois Midwestern. I'm not sure, but middle class family with a normal 6-year-old kid, and you turn them into white trash. From, I mean, is it meant to be set in Illinois? Because they sound like they're from fucking Alabama or something. They just sound like white trash. And they take it to Michael Myers, who is a normal looking kid, normal height, and it turns into like some 7-foot giant. It's a fucking mess. And he's blonde, then he's dark haired. It's a mess of a film. And Rob Zombie I like Rob Zombie. Stick to fucking just hillbilly white trash horror. Don't try and take something that's from the fucking suburbs and turn it into some fucking garbage like this. Just stick to your own shit. Next up, God, it doesn't get any better. It's Halloween Resurrection. Yeah, this film, it's going to go above. This is in order, so it is going to go ahead of Halloween. But this is Halloween trying to be like Big Brother, trying to be relevant, because Big Brother, well, certainly in the UK, and I think it was in the US in the early 2000s, was a big thing. And I think that they just tried to jump on the gravy train. Bad idea. Really bad idea. You put Michael Myers in a house which is all of a sudden enormous. This is the largest house in Haddonfield by some distance, because Michael's everywhere. He's in the underground. He's everywhere. He's killing people left, right, and centre. It makes no sense. Busta Rhymes beating up Michael Myers. What? This is a disastrous movie. It really is. Whoever conceived of this, oh my God, bad idea. Swiftly on. This is just me groaning every time I see a new film. And this is the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street, and this is still strictly D tier. Now it's going to go there. Jackie Earl, is this Jackie Earl Haley his name? I'm not sure, but it's any attempt to remake Elm Street. It's a bigger disaster than trying to remake Halloween or Friday the 13th. Halloween, Friday the 13th, these guys got masks. They're just big guys. You throw a mask on. It doesn't work like that with Night on Elm Street. Freddy's got a personality, like a real personality. You've got to do more than just be a face. And he does a decent job. I don't really blame him for the film. It's not his fault. It's the script. It's the direction. You could have done something decent with him, but unfortunately, it's people. The hardcore. I mean, I'm talking as a casual fan. The hardcore fans are going to see him as being totally inferior to Robert Englund, and I see that, and I'm not a big fan. So if I see that, then what are the hardcore fans going to think? And that's the problem you've got with Nightmare on Elm Street. You've got somebody who's so iconic through who they are as an actor and not as a character, because Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. It doesn't work the same way with Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. You know, CJ Graham, Kane Hodder are not Jason Voorhees. They played the character. They are not Jason Voorhees. Michael Myers, Nick Castle, his name escaped me from it. Nick Castle is not Michael Myers. He comes pretty damn close, but he's still not Michael Myers. Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. It's just a fact. It just is, and I think that's where it's let down. But on to number 26, and we go. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, still strictly in detail. The best part of this film is the opening 20 minutes, and it's a dream. That's the best part of the film. It is the dream sequence, and once the dream sequence is over, the film takes a downturn. It's gory as hell. The gore is really nice in this film. It's probably the goriest Halloween film of them all, including anything that came before in the old timeline. But again, Michael walking around with half a mask on, seeing his face, and he's 7 foot tall. That to me is. I would prefer this to have been a new franchise as a new horror icon, because I don't see how this is Michael. I really don't. It's just not Michael Myers. This is a different beast altogether. Michael should be an unassuming, unassuming in the way that if he does appear somewhere, even if he's got a mask on, he can dissipate into the background. And in Halloween 2, he's what, 6 foot, 6'1". The newer Michaels are just freaks of nature, and it doesn't work. But anyway, on to the next film. This is no big shock. I want to say I meant to take from the start, it's not going to be kind to Elm Street, this ranking, because Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Elm Street fan, and this is the worst. Well, it's not the worst of the bunch. Freddy's Dead it gets gradually worse. I mean, the thing about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is that, notwithstanding New Nightmare, which I've not included in this list because I still don't really regard it as one part of this collection of films, with the exception of 2, I'm giving the game away a bit for future rankings, but they just get gradually worse. I don't think there's anybody, not saying nobody, but I think if most people's rankings of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, nearly everybody puts 5 behind 4, behind 3, behind 2, behind 1. And they probably put 4 behind 3, behind 2, behind 1. It's just the way it works. And this came out in '89, I think, and this this is the same year that Jason Part 8 came out, Friday the 13th Part 8, and this was the dying breaths of a genre that was on its last legs. And as much as I love Friday the 13th Part 8, it does represent that. I mean, it's I love the film, but it's not a great film, and you can absolutely see that it's a genre that is on life support, and it would take a good 7 years for it to get that sort of injection. I'll get into that into another video, but yeah, so Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 is there, but next up, right, this is a film that is in that sort of zone of just absolute sort of non-activity with the horror genre. It's Jason Goes to Hell from 1993. I'm going to put it in C category because I do get sort of retro vibes from it, and I still get a good feeling from like watching it. But 1993 is possibly one of the worst years ever for horror films. And if anybody who's not like an old millennial or late Gen Xer or a younger Gen Xer, you can't appreciate just how bad the early 90s was. If Christian horror, if you ever watch this video, you probably won't, but I know you're a younger horror fan. Early 90s, as someone of my age, Piz's age, Lorne's age, this era was just tragic to be a horror fan. There was absolutely nothing going on. It was all straight to video. There was nothing going on in the cinemas. And what was straight to video was just, stuff like this, which, I know it's got its fans, but this is the best there was. This is as good as what it gets. Now imagine fast forwarding 20 years and saying, by the way, what you've got now is as good as it's going to get for the next 3 or 4 years. You'd be like, what? That's how depressing things were in the early 90s. It was that bad. And 1983 was kind of like the epitome of like bad horror, because you were just far away removed from the late 80s, and you were just far enough away from 96 when Scream reinvented everything. So it was just this hinterland of just awful horror. And yeah, I know this has got its fans, but it's a bad film. It is a bad film. And The Hidden did it better 6 years earlier with Carl McLachlan. A far better film. So, moving on. Where are we up to? Jason Goes to Hell. Yes. So, Freddy versus Jason. 2003 was this? Was it 2003? 18 years old? It seems like it was longer. It actually seems like it was longer ago than this. And this was a disappointment. I mean, the fact that I put it, where did I put it? Yeah, I put it 24th. I put it 24th from 30 films. So this shows how much of a disappointment it was for me. But there was a massive hype for this film, and what a disappointment. Freddy kind of like owned Jason in this film a lot of time. Jason kind of got the last laugh, or did he? But it didn't really feel like a Jason film. It felt a lot like a Freddy film. And for someone who's like far more of a Freddy fan, far more of a Jason fan than a Freddy fan, not to my taste, at all, because I'm not a massive Freddy fan, and I wanted Jason to be like the dominant character, and he did kind of take a little bit of a backstage in this film, and it wasn't a good film. It was, I mean, Ronnie Yu, don't think he understood either franchise, really. I mean, didn't he, in this film, Jason was afraid of water. What? Yeah, maybe when he was like 10. Well, come on. Um, but that's all I've got to say about that one. Next up, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, Dream Warriors. I've really got nothing much to say about the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Not 4, 5, and 6. Um, they just don't do anything. They don't do the first 3 films. I think have got merit, and hence why they are higher up in the list. But anything after that, it doesn't do anything for me. 4, it's much the same as 5. It's by this point, 1988, slasher films were on their arse. Freddy was being a joker, and he'd been that way, getting that way from Part 3. And I think the ownership of Freddy had maybe started looking towards making him more of a cash cow, making him a bit more light-hearted. Because I remember him, wasn't he doing stuff on MTV at this time, or maybe a few years after? But yeah, it's not a good movie. Next up, where am I going to go next? Jason X. Jason X. Lorne wouldn't like this ranking because it's where am I putting Jason X? I'm putting Jason X 21st out of 30 films. But Jason X is what it is. It's not a Friday the 13th film. And I'll say this, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The Friday the 13th franchise died in 1989, and this is not a Friday the 13th film. It came out in 2001. It is called Jason X. It has no relation to Friday the 13th, apart from Jason Voorhees. He's frozen, and next thing you know, it's the year 2300, something like that. I can't quite remember. But you still got horny teens who dress very much like the early 90s with early 90s hairstyles, and they're all horny, which is a good thing. It does feature it features one of the best kills in the franchise with the whatever the stuff is used in Terminator 2. Is it liquid nitrogen? It's the same stuff from Terminator 2 where he frees the Terminator C-1000. And there's also a kill with a sleeping bag, which is a rip-off of Friday the 13th Part 7. But it's still cool. But yeah, it is what it is. Jason X it's aged horribly in the last 28 years. It really has. It looks, if you set a film in 1981 and you put it on a campsite, how's it going to age? You just put normal people in a normal setting in 1981. If you make a film in 1983, let's say 2001, and you try and set it in outer space, it's not going to age well, is it? Because you're going to be like, well, this isn't to be the future, and then why do they look like that? And that's always the problem with setting films in the future. So yeah, there's Jason X anyway. Next up is, if I can find the picture, Halloween 2018, and this is still C tier. Yeah, this film really got me buzzing when I first saw the trailer. I was really looking forward to it. Watched it, liked it, but again, like a lot of people went back to it and were seeing issues with it. For instance, when Michael first arrives in Haddonfield, he just goes on a rampage. He goes to like 2 or 3 houses, can't quite remember, but he goes to 2 or 3 houses and just wipes out, 3 houses, 3 families, 3 people. And that just goes completely against everything he was in the original film. And this is meant to be the Michael Myers we saw in 1978. Michael Myers of 2018 is meant to be, if he's anything like we believe in 1978, is he's just not quite human. He's very methodical. He's a machine. He's almost like a machine. And has this machine changed his priorities in 40 years? Why is he suddenly going on a crazy rampage? Much akin to what he did in Halloween 2. Halloween 2 is not related to Halloween 1 in any way, shape, or form, or any other Halloween film. So why has he changed his modus operandi completely? It is just completely bizarre. This is not what he does. This is a Michael Myers that we see in 2, 4, 5, 6. So it makes no sense. And that's not the reason I'm putting this as low as I am. But it doesn't help matters. One of the reasons I'm putting it where I am is because, unfortunately, nostalgia plays a massive part in being a horror fan. And watching a Halloween film as a 42 when this came out, that has a big impact. So that is the reason I'm putting this as low as. But that whole issue with what he does, I'm looking at that and going, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. So next up, sticking on a newer Halloween theme, it's Halloween H2O. Now, I've got no issue with this film in general. I went to cinema to see this back in '98. I was 21, maybe 22 when this came out. Just the 20-year, Now this film, it gets confused with the Halloween time. So this film completely ignores anything after 2. I have to constantly remind myself of this because it's so confusing, the timeline of Halloween. But it's the reason this film suffers, I think, is because it comes across as a bit of a Scream ripoff, and it didn't do themselves any favors with, look at that picture. That was the DVD cover, I think, and it's just the cast all staring at the camera. Now, I've not got an issue with this film as such, but it is very of its time. And I know every horror film is of its time, but because the late 90s was such an iconic point, I think it's kind of been crystallized. I'm using big words here, which I don't even understand half myself, but it's almost like crystallized in time as this sort of point of like the very late 90s. And you can absolutely tell almost to the year when this came out, because anybody who's a fan of slasher films in the late 90s, 96 Scream, if you watch this, you go, well, this came out after Scream because of the DVD cover, but wasn't quite into the 2000s. And it's not a bad thing, but yeah, it does. I think this film ultimately will suffer, and I think it suffers for me just from nostalgia. Is that it does suffer slightly from that time of the late 90s, where because it's a Halloween film, it doesn't quite feel authentic to the time, even though it is of the time, because it does feel like it's, even though it's a Halloween film and you think, well, it should be paying homage to Halloween, it does almost feel like it's paying homage to Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I think that hurts the film to people who watch it now. But I could be wrong. But anyway, on to the next film. And it's getting hard now because they're all pretty good films. Well, maybe not this one. Halloween 5. I haven't got too much to say about Halloween 5. It's just that I love this film. It came out in 1989. It's not a great film. It's really not. But the era it came out, and the fact that I watched this relatively not quite when it came out, but close enough that I just love it. And it's yeah, I've got nothing to say. I've really I'm just lost for words. It's not a great film, but I just really enjoyed it. So I'm not even going to say any more about it. Next film is, and yes, we've still got 19 Elm Street films still to choose from. And even though I'm not a big fan of Elm Street, Dream Warriors, and we're going to move up. Why is B tier underneath C tier? I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to put that in B tier. 19 Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. A lot of people rate this as the best 19 Elm Street film. The thing about the Elm Street franchise, I'm not the biggest fan, but virtually everybody who is a fan, they always rate one of the first few films as the best film. You don't get that with the Friday the 13th franchise, and even with the Halloween franchise, it veers out to 4, maybe even 6 is in the top 3 films. With Elm Street, it does tend to be focused on the first 3 films, and I think it's justified because I think after the first 3 films, it does take a massive drop. But 9 Elm Street Part 3, a lot of people, although they have it ahead of 1, I think the fact that it is the third, and because I'm not a massive fan of the franchise, I think by 3 it's already getting slightly tired, although it is still interesting. I love 2 because they were doing something completely different. But yeah, 3 would definitely be where I'd put it. But I'm still, for someone who's not a fan of the Friday past the Elm Street fan of the Elm Street franchise, I'm putting ahead of quite a few Friday films and Halloween films. Where are we up to now? Friday the 13th part remake. Yes. So I don't know why C is ahead of B. That makes no sense. But yeah, the Friday the 13th remake, I think 2009 is a film. A lot of people say how the first opening 10 minutes is like the best of the entire franchise. I don't agree with that at all. I like it, but to say it's, no, not at all. I don't know how you can say that. And I don't even think. Oh, is it the best part of the film? Maybe, but that's not saying that much. I mean, the film is decent. I mean, the reason I put this so high over other films, which maybe are potentially films I enjoyed more going into them, is I think the nostalgia. Now, this is nostalgia from only like 11 years ago or 12 years ago, but it was almost nostalgia for a franchise that felt like it had been lost. And bear in mind, I saw this film in 2010, probably just not long after it came out. But by this point, a genuine Friday the 13th film had been, and now I'm talking about a genuine Friday the 13th film now. So we're talking 20 years. So I really got the feels for this film. I really, really enjoyed the setting. Just going back to the lake. Now I know Jason Goes to Hell features that, but I've said this before. Jason Goes to Hell, in my opinion, is not a Friday the 13th film, really. And I think that's why I put this film so high. I don't pretend to say that it's a better film than a couple of films I've put behind it, but because I'm such a massive Friday the 13th fanboy, I have to put it higher because it's just what it did. So that's where it goes. Where are we up to now? God, this is going to be controversial. Night in Elm Street Part 1. I know it's far down, and I put it in the wrong place. It goes there. Night in Elm Street Part 1 is an iconic film. It's the birth of Freddy. I understand that, but I do have an issue with a killer in a dream world. I do, and that is why Nightmare on Elm Street has never been my thing over the Friday the 13th franchise or the Halloween franchise. A killer in dreams to me is not. Maybe it's scary when you go to bed and you go to sleep, but in the real world, if you're watching a film of a nighttime and you're watching a Nightmare on Elm Street film, it's just not quite as chilling because you think, a guy in your dreams, well, you can't get me now because I'm watching a fucking film and I'm wide awake. Whereas Halloween, I mean, Friday the 13th as well, unless I'm going to go to a campsite, I'm not worried about Jason. That's the beauty of Halloween. You know, suburban setting. I live in suburbia. And I think that's why that is such a chilling thought. Going back to Nightmare on Elm Street, it's got some iconic shots. It really has. You know, the glove coming out of the bath, Johnny Depp, you know, getting sucked into it. Was it Johnny Depp who got sucked into a bed? I always forget which it was Johnny Depp or it was another character. I think it was Johnny. Was it Johnny Depp? But anyway, that kill is iconic. But it's again to me, yeah, it's the idea of him as a killer is not as terrifying as Jason or Michael. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was never sort of high up the list, you know, as what it could have been, because it's just personal preference. But next up is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Now, I'm going to go to, yeah, I'm going to stay B tier because Halloween 6 is a film that I always look at it. It's always just some sadness that I watch this film because Donald Pleasance, he was clearly struggling at this time. He was clearly a man who wasn't well, and he lived a good life. He was like in his late 70s at this point, but this is a man who gave a lot of his later life to the Halloween franchise, and you know, in all honesty, they probably didn't deserve Donald Pleasance for what he gave to the franchise. You know, a man of that caliber being directed in a film like Halloween 5. It's probably a bit of a, you know, it's probably not fair on him because, like, you know, I mean, I love Halloween, but Halloween 5 is not a great film. And you take a man like Donald Pleasance and you're asking him to appear in that. Well, I mean, kudos to him because, you know, I've got even more respect for him after that. But Halloween 6, it's definitely a darker Halloween. This is you can feel like this is a film, a product of the sort of 90s. This is just before, you know, the rebirth of slasher films, but you can see the sort of, there was like a new level of brutality to this film, which I think would be introduced more in the late 90s. A young Paul Rudd playing Tommy, you know, if only we could get him back for like the new franchise, you know, the new sequels would be incredible, but he's obviously way too big an actor for that now. But yeah, some lovely cinematography in this film, glorious opening shots, really, really, I mean, I think people have mentioned this before on other YouTube channels. Glorious. It really does feel like Halloween, and you get some real douchebag characters who really, really deserve to die, and you feel no remorse for them. But it does suffer slightly from that mid-90s sort of, I can't even put a word on it. There's a feel for these films of the 90s just before Scream came out, where it's hard to describe really, but I don't know really. I can't really put my finger on it, but I suppose I appreciate it for what it is, because these films that came out just before Scream, they are kind of like, will be like a time capsule of certain events, because from '96 onwards, it really was kind of like everything was carbon copy and paste. We do it this way. So I think in the early to mid '90s, directors and film studios were kind of maybe going to be a little bit more daring with what they were going to do, because there was not really much money going into horror. And so I suppose it was kind of like throw everything at a wall and see what sticks. And I'm not saying Halloween 6 was like that, but there were films at the time which were of that sort of nature. But anyway, moving on. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. I'm so glad I've made that list, because I would be stuttering like you don't know what. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Yeah, this is this is notorious, isn't it? You know, we all know why this film is notorious. It's the gay Nightmare on Elm Street, and it, in my opinion, is the best Nightmare on Elm Street. It's the only Nightmare on Elm Street where they can't. I mean, am I wrong? Freddy became physical in this film. He actually came into the real world. Am I wrong in thinking that? Because, like I say, I'm not a massive Elm Street fan. I watch each film probably twice at the most, but I've seen this about 3 times. But he does come into the real world, so it's the kind of, to use a wrestling term, they break kayfabe, and reality is sort of, he comes into the reality, and all the better for it. That's why I like. If that's the case, then all the better for it, because that's what I like. I want Freddy in people's faces. I want Freddy just killing people left, right, and centre. I don't want him to have to get into their dreams to do it. And yeah, it's obviously the undertones to this film are well known. I mean, the actor apparently was gay. I don't know if he was at the time or whether he came out after the film, but more power to him. But yeah, for doing something different, this feels like the most different Elm Street film. That's the reason why it's so high on my list, because it is not like the typical Elm Street film, and that's why I like it. Because at the end of the day, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, they are all quite, I wouldn't say similar. They all follow the same sort of, he comes in your dreams. At least with this, they tried to do something different. I just wish they'd stuck with it. I just wished after 2, maybe it bombed. I don't know. I don't remember what it did at the box office. I've no idea. But if it did bomb, it's a shame, because I would have loved to have seen carry on in this trajectory, but they didn't, and they went back to. I'm afraid they got more jokey, and we all know where I'm from there. But and next up is. Yes, Friday the 13th Part 8. It is ahead of Freddy's Revenge. Now, I did say I was a big Friday mark compared to Nightmare on Elm Street mark. I will just say it came out in 1989. I've said it before, I was 13 in 1989. Therefore, this is one of the first ever slasher films I ever saw. I think just after Friday the 13th Part 6 and 7. I love this film. Yes, Camp Crystal Lake does look like it was filmed in Canada, but what I always say is, more than Canada, it actually looks like Loch Ness. So if anyone's Scottish, anyone's Scottish watching this, anyone who's Scotland, this looks like Loch fucking Ness. This doesn't look like Camp Crystal Lake, but who cares? Yeah, it's the perfect Friday. As I say, what I love about Friday the 13th is the lake setting, And what I love about 7 and 8, even though they're not the best films, the film starts off with with Jason trapped at the bottom of the lake, and for me, that is the perfect start with Friday the 13th film. Him trapped at the bottom of the lake. They may not be the perfect two films, but him trapped at the bottom of the lake, that for me is just fucking golden. I love that. I love him trapped at the bottom of the lake. In terms of the film, you've got a sleazy school teacher, you've got a slutty blonde, you've got a nerd, you've got a really unforgettable, no, really forgettable final girl. She's probably the worst final girl of all time. You've also got Ken Kirsinger, who gets thrown against a wall or a mirror by Kane Hodder, and he obviously would go on to become Jason in Freddy vs. Jason. It's nice to see because I didn't like him as much as Kane Hodder, but he did a decent job. But yeah, I mean, Holt reality when they get to Manhattan, although it's probably Vancouver, I'm not quite sure. I think there's one scene in Times Square, which probably cost him more than the budget of the entire film. But yeah, suspend reality. When they get to Manhattan, why is he still chasing them when there's like thousands of people just around? What's his motivation for like going after two people? And why? How could they not escape him? You're in Manhattan, one of the busiest cities on earth, and they couldn't escape, and they got on a subway. Why? Why would you go underground? Get on a bus. Anyway, I'm overthinking things. Next up, it's Friday the 13th, part 5. Yeah, this is still going to be B tier. We haven't quite gone to A tier yet. I'm sure Piz would appreciate the high ranking, probably not high enough for him, but I don't think Lorne would be too happy because I've got this at number 11. This is the Roy film. It's not Jason, it's Roy. It's sleazy. It's very, very gory. There's a lot of nudity. This is if Jim Wynorski directed Friday the 13th or Russ Meyer, somebody like grimy sort of grindhouse sort of films, then this would be your go-to film. It's not. It doesn't really feel like it does feel like a Friday film, and in some ways doesn't. It's kind of like it borders the traditional Friday films and the later ones, which just have no relevance to Friday the 13th. But it does it in a glorious way and in a way that you don't even care. By the end, you don't even care that Roy's the killer. It's like, well, we know that Jason's coming back. The fact that you've released this 12 months after the final chapter, we know he's going to come back. So this is like a nice, bit of filler. And I think that's why I probably back in the day, I think I enjoyed it probably more than what it'd come out like 20 years later. I'd be like, what the fuck is this? But the fact they came out within 12 months, I thought, yeah, you're just testing the water. You realise you fucked up by killing off Jason, and I think you know that you're gonna have to bring him back. So you bring back someone else in a mask. See how it goes. I don't quite know why you did it. I still don't quite know why Roy didn't go after the one person who killed his son. But it is what it is. So yeah, Friday the 13th, part 5 would be there. Next up, yes, we're getting low now. We're getting to the upper echelon. And Friday the 13th, part 7, The New Blood from 1988. Still going to be B tier though. This is where Jason Voorhees battled Carrie, basically. Yeah, they went the Carrie route. You've got some sort of sleazy older guy who's like the sort of stepfather. Was he stepfather? He was like the love interest of Carrie's mum. Wants to like embrace her, abilities. He's obviously he knows something's going on. it's not, as I say, this film features highly because it is of its time. And as I say, beginning of the film, I keep saying fucking Michael. Jason's in the lake, tied down. Always the perfect start to a Friday the 13th film. And it came out in 88. Like I said, 1988, 12 years old, just getting into horror films, getting into slasher films, sleepovers with friends, watching these sort of movies. And that will always play a bigger role in me enjoying the film than anything I watch now. Now, anybody's watching this, you must feel the same as me, surely. You know, you can watch a modern film you'll love, but it's got to be amazing to feature above a film you loved as a kid, which may not have been even been that good a film. Am I the only person who thinks that? Because the films we watch as teenagers, they're with us for life. And a film I watched like 2 days ago, I've already forgotten about, unless it has massive, massive impact on me. It's forgotten about. I'm completely off plot here. I'm just saying I watched Godzilla versus Kong yesterday, and I can barely remember a thing about the film. Absolute fucking garbage. If I'd watched it when I was 12 on the cinema, who knows? Maybe I'd still be thinking about that film 30 years later. But anyway, back on plot. Back on plot. So we have got 1, 2, 3. We've got 8 films left, and we are going Friday the 13th. Now we are finally going 8 here because this film it's very unusual in that of all the 3 franchises, this film never ever features at the top of anyone's list. Very rarely. When you take into account Halloween, the original Halloween is always number 1. It always is, and rightly so. But Nightmare on Elm Street, it's always 1 or it's 3, sometimes 2. Friday the 13th, I've never known a franchise, not talking about these 3 franchises, I'm talking about any horror franchise. I rarely see a franchise where a film as far gone as like a 4th, 5th, or 6th features as the number 1 film. Like, look at Child's Play. It's always 1 or 2. I don't know, there's a later one which people like, but I honestly don't think it's ever number 1. You take into a franchise, Saw. It's going to be Saw 1, surely, for most people. Amityville Horror. It's the first one. It's very rare, isn't it? That a film late on in the day is a 4th, 5th, 6th features as someone's favourite in the franchise. But Friday the 13th is that franchise, and for that reason, Friday the 13th, the original, is only, I have got 4 films ahead of this from the franchise. I mean, part of it maybe is down to the lack of Jason. I mean, obviously he appears in the end, or does he? Was that ever established? Was that ever established that he did appear at the end? I'm not sure, because I don't know if I've ever seen, like, if it's like Blade Runner was Deckard the Replicant, or was he? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen it confirmed by Sean Cunningham that he was definitely there or he wasn't, unless I'm just miles behind the curve. But I think that is one of the reasons why some people place this further down from some of the other films. But it's still a fantastic movie with little budget. It just shows what you can do with a bit of imagination. But it's going to feature slightly below a few of the other films. And the next one up is the sequel, Friday the 13th Part 2. And that is going to be still 8 here. Sackhead Jason. A Jason that is kind of he's always unique, as in that he's quite stealthy and he moves. There's a scene in Friday the 13th Part 2 where they're driving down the track and you see him just dart across, and he's running, basically. He's running. He's still human Jason, but he's the Jason before Zombie Jason, and he's also the Jason before Part 3 and Part 4, where by Part 3 he has gotten, although he's not Zombie Jason, he's started taking on more of robotic sort of walk and stance. In Part 2, he's still very, very much human, and he does look far more like, human sized. He doesn't look like a big man. He's certainly not like small, but he's not imposing physically as he is by Part 3. He's really imposing. Obviously with the sack over his head, he's kind of like almost like a pathetic character, and that takes away some of the imposing qualities of him. But I think that's what makes Part 2 maybe it is such far more of a unique film. You do see the progression of the character. Part 1, we just see his mother, potentially see him as a child. Part 2 feels kind of like although he's fully grown, it feels like a teenage Jason who's maybe not quite really sure where he belongs in the world. I'm probably overthinking this, but by Part 3, he's very much adult Jason, very intimidating, and obviously it goes on to where he's just full-on killing zombie. But I mean, it's a very, very, it's a solid horror film. Obviously, it's a very short film. I mean, you've got a 10-minute opening sequence from the first film, but I love Friday the 13th Part 2. But we are getting to top 7, and we get to Halloween 3, or AKA the Halloween that isn't a Halloween film. And I've put it in the wrong tier by mistake, so move it down there, and it won't go down there. So there we go. Yeah, Halloween, Season of the Witch, Halloween 3. It's Tom Atkins as well. The god, Tom Atkins. May he live forever. This film it's almost like the ultimate John Carpenter film. It's like, and just for the soundtrack, I know he didn't direct it, but that soundtrack, I mean, did he do the soundtrack to Halloween 3? I can't even remember who did the soundtrack, but that synth is just so intimidating. It's so intimidating, and it's got such a glorious Halloween feel to it. I mean, in this universe, Michael Myers doesn't exist, but who needs Michael Myers in a universe that is as dark as this? Because this is some dark shit. This is like, a plan to take over the world by, implanting bugs into kids' brains. It's just, it's glorious. And I love, once they get out of the city, Tom Atkins and the female lead, who I absolutely adore. I can't remember what her name is, but yeah, many fond memories of her getting out the shower. I'll just say that much. But then they go to the small town where, they're doing their evil schemes. It's just, it's such a good, such good vibes, such good atmosphere. It really is such a really. It does feel like a real Halloween film, and as I say, Tom Atkins is Tom Atkins. I would love to have seen Tom Atkins in an actual, Michael Myers Halloween film. But we are now on to the top 6. So what will come next? And it is Halloween 4. Still A tier. We haven't got to S tier. We're not going to S tier yet. Halloween 4. One of the best opening shots to a Halloween film. Glorious autumn. Halloween weather. Just it really captures the mood. Um, you've got a really brutal Michael Myers in this film. The mask, the mask isn't. The mask is not quite on point. I think a lot of people say, it's part one, part two mask is just the apex. Part four, it's not quite there, but I'm willing to forgive that because this film is it's just it goes somewhere new. You're taking it needs to go somewhere new. Obviously, Jamie Lee Curtis had obviously long as she'd become a bigger star, basically. I mean, no disrespect to Halloween, but I think she likes us to think, well, do I really need to be doing this now? Donald Pleasence is back on for the ride, thank God, because without Donald Pleasence, I don't really know where they would have gone because they really needed someone to anchor it to the first two films after the third film. And I think they would have really been struggling without him. But yeah, obviously this is the beginning of the Fallen trilogy. Now, I'm not a big fan of the whole idea of the Fallen trilogy. I think from part two, they were trying to give Michael, a purpose for what he was. And it doesn't, as I say, once you take away, if you take a character like Michael Myers and you start peeling away the layers, each layer you peel away becomes less intimidating, less scary. I think by part four, you would. I think by part four, you would really begin to see, that it was starting to fall away. But I mean, it's a very very solid film. It really is. It's definitely, you know, up there with the best slashes. I mean, let's face it, it was an 80s film. And it's one of the best slashes of the 80s. Um, and next up we have Halloween 2. And I'm still staying in 8 here. Still staying in 8 here of Halloween 2. This is Michael at his slowest. He's extremely slow in this film. You wonder how anybody. I mean, and also, it's a film set in a hospital, and it is the quietest hospital in America. You've got Jamie Lee Curtis, who doesn't do anything in this film apart from lie in the bed and eventually is trying to escape. But I still love the film. I still love this film. It's Michael Myers really sort of up in the ante with the brutality, and yet I don't care for the fact that they say he's his sister. You've got some iconic shots. You've got, the death of Ben Tramer being murdered. I was going to say murdered by a police car because they just, what were they doing there? And it just explodes. You've got sleazy nurses. It's got everything you want from an early 80s slash film. But yeah, as I say, it really is. It's off its time, and technically, it probably doesn't deserve to be where it is. But I love it for what it is. And now we get into the top 4 films, and it is Friday the 13th Part 3, and it's still A tier. It's still A tier, and it's gone to F tier. Yeah, this film, it's Richard Brooker as Jason, arguably the best Jason. He's fantastic and he's really, really intimidating. He's a big guy. He's just got the walk down to a T. I love the mask. It's the birth of the hockey mask. There's so many iconic moments in this film. I mean, how many franchises have the iconic mask as the introduced in the third film? How many franchises, how many balls? That takes balls to do that. That's ballsy. And it becomes the most iconic mask, arguably, in movie history, even more so than Michael Myers. But yeah, great film. Really, really enjoyable characters. Great. I mean, some of the 3D shots are a bit cheesy. I love that where he fires like the dart into the girl's eye, but the one where there's a kill where he's like doing a handstand, and I think the yo-yo scene, that just really comes across as really really cheesy. Which, yeah, he could he could have done with the 3D aspect there, but it is just it's such a good film, and it really is. It's really really. I think most people would probably place this in their top three when it was Friday the 13th films. Number two is going to be Jason Lives, Friday the 13th Part 6. And this is S tier. This is my introduction to the Friday the 13th franchise. I think I was about 13. This is probably about 1989. Went to a friend's house, stay over. We were well into Jason by this point, but we hadn't seen any of the films, or I hadn't anyway. We were getting really, really into like the slasher films. I think we'd seen Sleepaway Camp. I think we'd seen Nightmare on Elm Street, but I'd never seen a Friday the 13th film. And we went with his mum, and we rented this out. And this was like an 18 certificate film, and we were like 12, but she didn't give a shit, which is good. And we went back to his place, put it on, and my mind was blown. My mind was fucking blown watching this film. And bear in mind, I had no idea the history of Jason. For me, he was just this fucking zombie. I didn't know anything about the backstory. There was no internet back then. And to me, it was just this like sort of the Frankenstein character who'd been brought back to life, and went on a rampage. But it was just glorious to watch. And from that point, we're sure, I think the following week we probably rented out, part 7 and then part 8, and then we've done the entire back catalogue. But yeah, just great memories, and the film holds up. The film definitely holds up. I love the opening montage with the James Bond style, where he's like goes, slashes the knife. It's so meta before 8 years before Scream, 9 years before Scream, 10 years before Scream, I think. But yeah, great film. But it's not the greatest Friday the 13th film. That belongs to the final chapter, and that is S tier as well. I'll just put it ahead of there. Obviously, I saw this film not long after part 6. We kind of went 6, 7, 8, and then we went back 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think I'm glad they went 1, 2, 3, 4 because I kind of got the full arc of his story as a human. Although at that age, it probably wouldn't have made much difference. But yeah, it's got the perfect balance of likable characters. You've got an iconic kid who would go on to become an icon in other films. I think they were lucky to get Corey Feldman at the time because he went on a run of films which is so iconic. My God, like Lost Boys, Stand By Me, and I think they kind of got him first. This was 84. And, so when people think about Corey Feldman, whenever they think about these films, they'll always revert back to this film as well. And yeah, they got likable characters. Ted Weiss is a fantastic Jason. And a really, fitting climax to the, quadrilogy or whatever you want to call it. We all knew it was going to come back. Well, off the time, I wasn't old enough, but, I think people at the time knew there's probably a good chance this franchise is going to come back if it makes enough money. It's just it's almost like the perfect slasher film. It's certainly the perfect camp slasher film. End of story. If there's a better camp slasher film, then I don't know. The Burning comes close. The Burning is the second greatest camp slasher film for me. But this, you can't top this. But number one is predictable. It's Halloween, obviously. It's the greatest horror film of all time. I'm not going to include Jaws as a horror film because Jaws is a better film, just about. But Jaws for me is a thriller. This is the greatest slasher film of all time. It's a horror film of all time. It is one of the most perfect movies ever made. From the opening shot, every little shot in this film is iconic. Just little things like when they're on the way to the Smiths Grove, mental asylum, and just like where she just puts the matches on the passenger seat, and you just see the matches. Even that, I can't, but something red. That shot to me is like kind of like iconic. It's just like every little thing about that film is iconic. It's like everything has a meaning to it. It's nothing is just done by accident. And just when he arrives, and I mean, okay, let's not overlook things. In the real world, you've got an escaped lunatic who's highly dangerous driving around. He probably would have been caught, before he went on the killing rampage. But just little shots, just like when Laurie is driving along, and Michael's car pulls in behind them, and there's like smoking a joint, and he's behind. He knows behind. They don't know, and they pull over, and he just drives off, and you see him turn and just look at them, and just all like hey, it's not Devon Graham. And when he looks, there's someone in that car with the mask on, just like turning and looking, and it's just so terrifying. And it's this broad daylight. It's such a chilling scene. And obviously the iconic scene where they're walking down and he's stood by the bush and he stands back to the side. I mean, my God, what you can do in broad daylight with a man in a mask with good direction is just incredible. And, directors take notes. This is what you can do with limited means, because let's face it, this film wasn't made on a tiny budget. He had a decent budget. I think it was $150,000. That's probably still a decent amount of money back in them days. But to do what he did, I mean, oh my God, so many iconic shots, and to get Donald Pleasence on board as well, it's just. I mean, they all form a perfect part of a perfect film. Donald Pleasence is the gnarled old veteran. Jamie Lee Curtis is like, this new up and coming actress. You've got even like the sheriff is like, he was cast perfectly. And it's, you can't be topped. It's, you can't, occasionally you lighten in a bottle, you capture lightning in a bottle. It happens once in a blue moon. You get it with Jaws, you get it with Halloween. More recently, you'd say you get it with a film like, actually more recently, I don't know. But the last film made me feel like this was probably Donnie Darko in 2001, so maybe not, I don't know. But it's each their own. But I think for people on our platform who like horror, this is like the apex of what horror should be, and it can't be topped. And for that reason, it stands tall. I mean, I'd have this on a different tier by itself, but yeah, it's the perfect film, almost. But that's the end of the tier ranking, guys. I'm really pleased how that went, actually. After last week's disaster, I thought it really went really, really well. So anybody who dropped in the chat, and a few people have joined in. But yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for everyone who watched. And I will see you soon. I'm probably going to be uploading a video maybe Thursday. I'm going to do a video about Run, Hide, Fight, because I really enjoyed that. I wouldn't mind making a film about that. But anyway, guys, until next time, I will see you later. Bye.